first week that I'm here, there was only about 30 or 40 people that lived here pretty much full time. Perry Jones, I started to meet Perry and got to know him a little well. Of course, that was David Koresh's father-in-law. I had understood that David was married to Rachel Koresh and that they had Cyrus, and she had a baby Star at the time, so they had 2 kids. There were other people that I were meeting. Mostly I was hanging out with some of the guys that were there, like Jamie Castillo and Greg Summers, and I kind of took a liking to each other. I spent some time with Greg. But mostly there was this excitement in the air because every day Perry would be going to the airport and bringing in people. And it would be like the Henrys, I think, came that first time. People from England were coming in. Quite a few black people were coming in from England that had gone to seminary school there. And David had told me that he went to many seminary schools, and a lot of their people would leave to come and study with him, which I thought was really interesting. People from New Zealand came, people from Australia were coming. It was a pretty diverse group of people. Pretty much all races, all colors, all creeds, many, even different religious backgrounds we had, Well, Pablo came a little later, he was from Israel. But, at the time it just seemed like most of them were Seventh-day Adventists, but it didn't seem to be exclusive to that. So David had told me that there would be people coming from all over the world to learn something called the 7 Seals. And it would be over the course of a 2-week period. And he said for the 2-week period, the studies would be pretty intense. It's not like normal when people aren't coming and going. There's more time to do things like play music and hang out. And there's much less Bible study. But he said for the 2-week period, there's going to be really intense Bible studies because there's a lot of information to cover in that 2 weeks. So it was kind of exciting because every night someone else, a couple other people would be coming in from different areas of the world. And Steve or Perry would pick them up and they'd come in, then we'd meet new people and talk to them. And as I got to know people, over and over and over, I kept getting the same story. It was really interesting. The people kept telling me that they were studying at seminary school in their native land. It could be Australia, it could be New Zealand, it could be England. A lot from England. And David came over there and he started to show them some things about the 7 Seals, and they all told me the same thing, that within a couple of hours of studying with David, they learned more about the Bible than they had their couple of years studying at the seminary school and paying all this money. So they started to come to the conclusion that this guy really had something, and it was deeper than what their professors had, and they left. They left their schools and came over to study for this 2-week period with David and really learn. And I heard that story over and over and over again, and I thought that was really interesting. So everyone shows up, everyone's here. There's about 130 people all together. It's over 100 at the time. And I just remember being, wow, it was kind of electric, all these people. And then David came in and gave like the very first study that very first night. And he held the Bible up and he said, this is 2 pieces of cow leather with a bunch of pages in between. And people spend their lives trying to figure out the meaning. And he held it up to his head. He goes, I see it panoramically from Genesis to Revelation as if it's happening before me. And I went, right, dude, whatever. I didn't buy that for a second. But that's it, I'm like, that's a powerful statement to make, You've given me some good Bible studies, but, you're going to have to put your money where your mouth is there. Well, it took about 2 or 3 days. That's where we're having the eight-hour study nights, where the studies would just go on and on and on until people would want to pass out, frankly. But the information was there, and you're making notes, and you're whipping through the Bible. You're going all over, and you're seeing such a bigger picture than you'd ever saw before of the Scripture. Really, within the first couple nights, I started to believe that he did see the Scripture that way, panoramically, as if it was happening before him, very, very visually. When he would talk about the New Testament, and he was talking, maybe I like to use the example of the woman at the well, but he did consistently if there was a conversation in Scripture, where it's dialogue, and not just not just some old guy writing, but it's actual dialogue. It's like his face would take on the expression of the people in the dialogue. And you would start to understand what was really being said there. In other words, if it had a sarcastic tilt, he would do that, and you would say, oh my God, that's exactly what's being expressed here. So when he gave a study, it wasn't like it was just an interpretation. You're reading it verbatim, okay? The entire chapter. He didn't just take little, like he didn't take like John 4:6 and say, this is what that means and expand upon it. He'd read the whole chapter, and you would kind of understand what the whole chapter meant in its context. But specifically, he would take on the characteristics of the people and even the facial expressions. So when you're reading, you're like, this is exactly what's being said here. And that was very consistent. He did that all the time. After that 2-week period, I came to the conclusion that he lived the Bible. It wasn't like he just knew the Bible. It was like he lived it. And that's what was really so powerful about David that most people don't get. His eyes didn't glow. We didn't worship him. We didn't bow down and say, oh, Holy One. It's nothing like that. David just had a challenge. I can reveal the 7 seals. If you can show me, I'll listen. If you can't, shut up and let me show you. I didn't know any better anyway. I was just a musician living in Hollywood, so I listened, and it was a fascinating journey and a fascinating ride.